going to introduce you. But okay. I didn't know.
That's all right. You hang on. Greetings. I'm Daniel Ketchum. I'm the president of the Nevada County Historical Society. Welcome tonight. So you all got your snow shovels out? Ready to go? Yeah. I'm lucky that we're not meeting on Sunday night, right? Oh, yeah. So Happy New Year. Happy New Year. You're wondering why in the heck am I saying that in November? It's because we don't meet in December. And say Happy New Year in December. So remember, no speakers night in December. But we will resume in January, and Carolyn's going to tell you all about that. So thank you for joining us tonight. She has a couple thank yous, including the cinematographer and our refreshments and everything. So good. Okay. You're on.
Okay. So again, thanks for coming tonight. I'm very excited to have April here tonight. I've known April since I first started teaching in my current district, like a long time ago. So we do want to announce that we got a new camera, and this will be the first speaker's night recorded. So, we want to thank Larry Hanna and Gay Connors for bringing refreshments, and Wally Hageman and Christy Teague and the Primitive Craft Store for the raffle. And if you haven't bought tickets yet, you can do that, and we'll have April at the end draw the winning ticket. And there will be no speaker's night in December, but in January, it will be Alan Rogers, and he's going to talk about the history of the Oddfellows Hall in Nevada City. And he's going to do a little presentation as if he were Aaron Sargent. And I was wondering, out of the folks that are here now, are any of you anticipating to come to the field trip on Saturday? Okay, a few of you. All right. So if you need to have directions to the Oddfellows Hall, catch me sometime. We are going to actually process some black oak acorns at the Oddfellows Hall from noon to 2. Okay, so I don't want to take April's time.
Does this look like a Railroad Museum promo?
Oh.
You're right, it is. Speaking of the Railroad Museum, Mr. Al Dittman has an announcement.
Yes, we are having on the first Saturday of December our Christmas at the Railroad Museum again this year. It's an all-day affair. Santa's going to be there all day. Refreshments, door prizes, silent auction, gift shop. Bring your camera. It's primarily for the youngsters, but oldsters are welcome too. We probably get more grandmas and grandpas with our kids sometimes than parents, but nevertheless, it's always a big day, and so we hope that maybe we'll see some of you there with your youngsters. And I'll just put this on the back here in case anybody would like.
Okay. So this is April Moore. She's from an indigenous person here from the Nisenan, Conco, and Washoe tribes. And she's a consultant. She works with various companies when they're excavating. She's an expert on, she can explain that better than I can. But she and her brother have started a website called MyNewFamilyStory.com, which I went to and read some. So if you want to check out her website, she and her brother have created that. And she's going to be talking tonight about how the local Native people processed acorns. So, yay for April.
Okay, thank you. We're going to start with this video, and it's going to pretty much explain a lot of acorn processing. I brought the materials that I use when I process acorn, and when I'm all done, I've brought acorn mush for you to sample. This video was taken in October of 1958. It's Lizzie, Enos, and let's see who she is.
You ready?
Yes. It's Marie Potts. That's at this point they've already gathered acorn. They're cracking and taking the shells off the acorn itself.
Can the picture be adjusted, or is that just the way it is?
I think that's what it is.
That's the way it is. This was originally a film.
Oh, okay.
As you can see, where the lady over here on your left side, that's Lizzie Enos. I have some material here, how I crack acorns. She shelled all the acorns, and now she's trying to get that membrane that's inside the acorn that covers the acorn meat itself, or the acorn nut. And this process is a winnowing process that she just did, and that also, you flip the acorns up and that membrane will fly off as the wind's blowing also. Here she's what we call pounding the acorn itself. This is, if you're not used to this, you'll end up stiff. Your neck and your upper arms will be really sore. But these ladies were so strong that Lizzie's pestle is kind of a regular size, and Louis Kelly's wife Londa used to have bigger ones about this big, and she'd have 2 in each hand, and she'd go like this into the hole, because you're pounding them and you want to get it done quick. So those ladies were very strong. Yes, it is. This is in her backyard, over at Clipper Gap off Bancroft Road. That mortar still is in her backyard. Now you see she's moved up to a bigger rock, a longer pestle. The bedrock mortars that you normally see that are several cups in a large boulder, you'll notice the depth of each cup. Some of them are really deep, and so they take pestles that could be a foot long.
So how long does it take to do enough for dinner?
It took me 35 minutes to do enough for this bowl. You pretty much know how much you're going to need.
Do the acorns have to dry first?
Yes, they do. If you pick an acorn right now, because it's been raining, you want to take it in and let them dry, and then you crack them and then you let them dry again, and then you do that process where you saw Lizzie taking the outside membrane off of it. It's like a piece of tissue paper on there, and then you let the acorns dry again, and then you go to the grinding process. Otherwise, they're so moist and oily, it'll stick to your pestle and the inside of your mortar. This is the traditional way of leaching acorn. Here, they're down by the Bear River here, Lizzie and Marie, in pre-cloth. They just put the meal on a thick bed of pine needles. There is a large loss of meal, but you know, as you filter through, your bed of pine needles could have been up to a foot deep. They would have just picked it out from in between, and what you lose, you lose. Obviously, this is an old film, so. This is filmed by Sam Barrett for Norm Wilson. Anybody that has seen the Smithsonian Volume 8, you'll recognize some of the attire these ladies are wearing. They were taking still photos at the same time, and 2 of these were used in that Volume 8 for the Nisanon section. This is one of those stills that was taken.
How long does it take to leach?
Took me 3 hours.
So you just constantly pour water over
I take a hose and let it drip and stir it a lot. You want to stir it. It is very bitter if you don't leach it. Plus there's a lot of tannic acid. It'll upset your stomach if you don't. And as you're leaching, you're testing it. You just stick your finger in and lick it. Lick your finger to see if it's to your taste, how you would like it. Black oak. Black
That's
oak.
the only one that you use?
That's the only, well, the only ones I use. In historic and prehistoric periods, each person would have had at least 200 pounds of acorns stored away for their winter and spring usage until the following fall when you can regather acorns. So in other words, 200 pounds a person per year is what you would have had.
Are other oak trees, acorns edible?
They are, but they're not as good as the black oak. The next best acorn is the blue oak. And up here, it's hard to find the blue oak. You would have had to gone down to the lower foothills into the valley. Now this is, you see photos of acorn being cooked in a basket. So I really thought this was very interesting to see someone actually doing it. You have to move very quickly with your paddle in that basket, and your loop stick pulling out the cooled off rock back into the fire and getting another rock and cleaning it off, usually rinsing it in a basket of water and then putting it in the basket. You can't let the rocks stay in those baskets because it'll burn the basket. And it cooks really quick. A small amount of acorn, after it's been leached, will almost 3 times its volume when you add water to it and cook. She's cleaning off the rock. She didn't want to lose her acorn, so she's sticking it in another basket. They don't have a real high, but they're good in protein. But they also have a lot of vitamins and minerals and a lot of fat. But it's like the omegas out of fish. This is her demonstrating how to cut deer. You can turn it off now. Unless you want to see how she does deer. Yes. Actually, she didn't smoke a lot of it. She dried it. So she jerkied her deer meat. And as a child and growing up, her house wasn't very big. It was a small little cabin. She'd have string across her house on the inside, and she'd drape her meat across that. And she had a little wood stove she cooked on and heated with. So it was naturally dried.
Did she have to do anything else to it, or she just laid it up there to dry?
Just laid it up there to dry.
What area did she live in?
Clipper Gap, Christian Valley area.
No salt.
Salt was used very sparingly. When I was a little girl and a child, we weren't allowed to touch salt or sugar or condiments, period. The adults were our supervisors. They would watch us, give us permission to use it, or they would use it for us. It's just a traditional thing where kids, could overuse, but salt was a very prized commodity. It was traded for a lot of very valuable products throughout the valley in the foothills and other groups around the Central Valley and foothills. And the Nisenan happened to have a large salt, it's not a mine, but it was a salt area in Lincoln. And the head man for the Nisenan people controlled that salt, so when they would go down and gather salt, you had to have kind of like your mayor go with you, of your group, and then everything was organized and you took only what you thought you were able to use, and it was used very sparingly.
You know how long it took for the meat to really become jerky by doing that?
About 3-4 days. Mm-hmm. It really doesn't take that long, especially this is the time of the year you would be jerking it. Deer season just ended. Of course, we didn't worry about deer season. You knew when to shoot them and when not to get them. But in a warm area, even if you were in your hoo, which is your house, you would string it up and it would dry just from the natural heat from the fire.
You know if bears ever went in to eat?
No, no. No, they kept bears away. So, I think it's done. Yeah. I really enjoy this video because it really is pretty self-explanatory, even though it has no volume or any language to it. It gives everybody a real good idea how the acorn was cooked in the basket, because you can't find that everywhere.
This part's gonna fun.
Yeah. Just pop it out. When you go to gather your acorn, you want to start in the fall. The first group of acorns that start falling in the latter part of August and early to mid-September are usually the culls. It's the ones that aren't going to make it, that are inferior to all the other acorns. And then about the end of September through all of October, and I can still collect right now because the weather's been really good, is when you want to gather. And when you're gathering, you look for the acorn. It's got the black oak. Well, I got a half one here. Looks kind of like this. And you want to check it out as you're picking. They have, if you see a little black spot or a hole, it's got a worm in it. You know, a lot of times the worm isn't so bad if he's just living in there, but in many times the worm is in there and he's eating the inside out of the acorn. And all you'll have is a fat worm. But otherwise, if it's just a little worm, you know, you grind it up with the rest of the meal. It's no big deal. But this is the perfect time. I've been gathering our acorns this last month and a half, and I store it away during the winter time, and I'm using last year's acorns now because I want them to dry out. And just like you saw on the video, I'll take mine and crack them, and then I'll crack a bunch of them, then I'll clean them out, and then I'll let them dry again. And this is what I was talking about. You see the color on this particular acorn. It's kind of a reddish brown. That's the outside membrane. And what I want to do is when this dries again is I want to take my little basket here. This is kind of like my sifting basket. And I'll shake this until all of those, if you can see, the outside membrane there is dry now. So it makes it easier to clean it. And Lizzie took it by hand and rubbed them like this. You can do that too if you don't have a little sifting basket. Just take them and, I hope you can see, and just rub them like that and drop them, and it'll come off on your hands too. Once you get the membranes cleaned off of them, your acorns are going to kind of look like this. You can come up when we're done and look at everything. And they'll be clean, and from there I go and let them dry again. I want to make sure they're nice and brittle, because if I go to grind the acorn and they're not really dry, as I said before, they'll be real oily and it'll stick to your pestle and on your bowl. Not everybody has a bowl. Some people just use a flat rock, but I have a reputation around the community for people taking things, and they repatriate a lot of these artifacts back to me because they know where they belong. And this is actually a piece that came from Oroville. A couple people had it, and they had a big guilty attack, and they brought it to me. Most everything in this poster board over here either is a permanent fixture, which is a bedrock mortar, and when you see one of those, you know that's a habitation site. And when you have a lot of holes in this particular rock, there had to be a lot of people. Because if the holes get really deep, they've been used for a long, long time. When you see the bowls like this, my other photos there, those are more portable. All of those loose pieces over there have been repatriated back to me, which they're going to go back to their original places. The one bowl in the middle top, I like it well, and I used it to grind my acorn. It's deep, and it's so smooth inside, but it's deep enough so when I'm pounding my acorn with my pestle, or my ba in Nisenan, that means my pestle, my acorns don't pop back up at me. But I don't use a whole bunch of acorns. I use a small handful and crush them down until I get it really fine, and then add another one that goes way faster than trying to do a great big handful. And you'll end up with a material like this where you got a lot of grain and fine mixed in. So you just do it slowly. Like I said, for this particular amount I cooked here, it was about a cup that I used to cook this, so I knew how much I needed. Once you do this enough times, you know your measurements and how much you need to process for yourself. This, you can see I use this bowl also in my processing. They're heavy, so when I'm doing it, I have to sit really low, and I usually sit on the curb on my patio and hold that with my feet and pound into it like this. Otherwise, it rocks. The bowl, I like at the top middle there that has the groove, which is very unusual bowl. It's just made out of granite. It's very smooth, and it's about this tall, and it's nice and deep, so it works really well. The bottom of it has a groove in it. When I first got it, we weren't sure what the groove meant. My husband said, well, you're probably putting it on a stick or a ledge so it doesn't rock. Well, it's actually an arrow straightener. It's a multi-use bowl. But it also, when you're sitting on the ground and you're pounding in it, I don't have to hold it with my feet. It actually sits still with that groove in it. So it really works well. But once I get my acorn down, finely ground, I go to my last phase and I cheat. I can actually get it really fine in here, but it takes a lot longer. I just use an antique meat grinder. And I get it so tight that it's really hard to crank, and I only have to do it once. Because as long as I get that flour pretty fine, then when I go through that meat grinder for the last phase, and it is hard to turn, I got to tell you, it is hard to turn. You know, when you're always asking for something, you know, you do it to yourself. One of the things that has been lost in, I'm hoping to encourage again for the young kids, is to create their own songs. Women used to sing while they were pounding acorn, and they would make their own songs while they were grinding acorn. And what I was told is that you could hear different songs while different people were grinding. But they, you know, you got to do something. Some people talked and visited, but a lot of the women just sang and made up songs as they were grinding their acorns. Yes?
About the drying, do you have to separate them? Or you put them all in one crate while they dry?
Yeah, I just put them, yeah. I have, what do you call them? A case for a soda or whatever, you know, aluminum drinks. It's about that deep. I just keep it by my wood stove. And then I leave my acorns there for a week, especially when you're gathering them right now because the ground's wet and it's rained on them. You want to dry it. Otherwise, they'll get rotten inside if you don't dry them and just leave them someplace where it's cool. They'll get rotten and moldy. Yes?
Have you ever been up to it's up the highway towards Little Town of Washington where they have that big lookout? There's a place that you pull over and they have little plaques, and I just noticed it myself about a month ago, but they have the geography of the area, each mountain named, and I had no clue that you could see the San Juan Ridge from there, but the reason I'm bringing this up is because they have the history, the cultural history of the Nisenan Indians and the population of them and how long they were in this country, and you know. And it's
No, I haven't, but I've heard about it.
It's very interesting. I can't quote you any.
No. And they do the same thing down at Bear Valley, but their information is poor. I made a comment to PG&E, you need to update your information. This is pretty lacking, you know. Kids know more than your kiosk. Yes?
Did any of the bedrock mortars have any other function other than grounding? Were they used for a particular food?
You could use seeds, all kinds of seeds in them, yeah. Some, there's another milling rock, I guess is the easy term, they used, and they were flat. And they barely had a dent in them. And those were used for, like, some people call these big pestles that look like this. They're longer, but they're smooth on these sides here. They would do this to mill seeds on these milling slicks. So you have, it's just not the ones with the holes, you have ones that are flat. And if you're walking anywhere up in the Sierras, I'd say, I'm going to say this and I'm going to probably find one below it, Blue Canyon and above, you'll find a lot of milling slicks on the granite outcrops. They're real easy to see. They're different color. A lot of times they're lighter than the rock itself. All you gotta do is go up and it'll be smooth as heck. You know, oop. I was at a place that had over 75 milling slicks. So how many people were there? And this is over the 7,000 foot elevation. So.
What about those tiny little cupules all grouped together? I know you've seen them.
I know what you mean. There's several theories. First one, they're game. Someone actually tried to make a game and they found these little bitty rocks and they are game balls. I have, someone gave me a bunch of these little rocks, perfectly round, and they're game balls. So they went, somebody tried with these game balls, and if the cupsules are real shallow, they're about this big and they're maybe 2 millimeters deep, they roll those rocks up in there and try to catch them in the cups. So one worked, but it was really hard to do, so they figured it was some kind of a game of skill. But the others, a lot of times we find 1 or 2 in an area, either by milling slick or by bedrock mortar, and more people are coming to the conclusion, because it hasn't been talked about very much, that those were used for medicine and herbs. So, because they never got deep and they never got big. They were real small. Yes?
I heard that sometimes, I don't know how often this happens, the Indians, and maybe in the summer, they would go off to the Nevada side and trade you to get pecan pine nuts and, you know, maybe trade the black oak.
Yeah. Washoe people love acorn soup. We still do that.
They don't have the right kind of oak stuff.
No. Actually, you know, there are black oaks in Washoe territory at the top of the, up around Kingvale, Soda Springs, Sand Ridge, up along that whole area, there are acorn trees or black oaks. They're not as prolific as we have here, but they do have them up there. And up towards North San Juan, Forest Service and I were talking one day, and one of the archaeologists was telling me that they'd come across this stand of black oak trees, and they started looking at them, and they realized the stand was absolutely square. And it was an old stand, so they realized that they had been planted intentionally. And it just took all that theory away that they just came along and picked wherever. So, but we do. Everybody does it. You always plant an acorn. You know, people allow them to sprout up, and you thin them out when they get too thick. They're good for firewood. They're good for food sources. Good for houses. They're also good. The black oak is also real good for a loop stick, and a loop stick's about this long. It's about this big, and you take a branch of the black oak and you take the you clean off the bark, and while it's still young and pliable, you make a loop, cross it over like this, like that, and tie it off and let it dry like that, and that's what you use to pull the rocks out of your basket while you're cooking acorns. And it stirs at the same time. So yes.
When that lady was carrying the hot rock, she got the hot rock out of the fire, it looked like, was she rinsing that in a bucket of
Yes.
water?
You rinse the ashes off.
Oh, just to get the ashes
Just to get the ashes off, and then she put it in the basket and kept stirring.
Oh, I thought maybe to get the ashes and then, but then you said that later that she was winnowing rocks out of it and had the rocks to it.
Yeah. No, she didn't want to put if you put the rock with the acorn meal on it, back in, it burns. The acorn meal's cooking and burning. So you take as much off the meal and then rinse it off again in water and toss it back in the fire. You have several of those rocks.
She rinsed it off on the way to the,
Uh-huh.
okay, and then again before it goes in the fire.
Yes. Yes. Let's see, about a week. I'm not doing it all day. It took me about 40 minutes to crack my acorns, and that was to get this container half full. And then my husband was watching football while I took the outside membrane off. So I was just keeping my own self company by doing that. And it took me 35 minutes to grind it up in my bowl before I put it in my antique meat grinder to make it really fine. So it took me outside, other than leaching, maybe 2 hours. The leaching took the longest. Yes.
What would be the best way to store acorn flour?
In your refrigerator.
In the fridge?
Mm-hmm. I do these demonstrations for different organizations, but a lot for the Maidu Museum. So I keep I keep all my demo containers in my refrigerator. I have an outside refrigerator, and I've had this about 3 years. As long as you keep it cool, it'll stay fresh.
So you can put it like in your basement where it's really cold?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The only thing you can't really store for very long is the final product, is the acorn, cooked acorn itself, because it spoils easy. Yes.
Oh, I had a question about the cooking method of the acorn itself.
Mm-hmm.
You peel it and cook it and eat it. I mean, it's not poisonous or
It'll make you sick if you don't leach it.
it will.
Yes. It's got a lot of tannic acid in it.
Okay. This question I was going to ask you because I live with an 89-year-old man who goes out and picks the acorns up, brings them in and cooks them on the stove, and then asked me to add it into his food. And I said, but you said that because we have sheep also, and he told me if the sheep eat the acorns, then it'll ruin their liver, the tannic acid. And I said, well, isn't it going to ruin your liver? Too much of it. So how does it make you sick? I mean, other than doing something in your liver, because your liver.
No, it just upsets your stomach, and you know, it'll make you sick. You'll feel real bad. Yeah. Anything that's got tannic acid will. It'll ruin everything, not only your liver. Yeah. Yes.
How long would you let the cracked acorns, whole acorns, how long would you let them dry before you grind it up?
I do it when I need it.
Okay, so you just leave them out.
Mm-hmm. Like I said, I'm cracking last year's acorns that I gathered. This year we've got them sitting by my wood stove. And I sit there in a big, like I said, in my little flat. It's about that deep until they feel right and they're not moist and they get warm. And then I'll put them in a bucket. And then if we have more, I'll put them by my stove. But I generally store them in a big bucket in my house.
After they're cracked?
Yeah.
Okay.
After they're cracked, you can leave them stored anywhere as long as you got to be careful though. I had some stored out in my garage, and not that it's a bad thing, it just looks funky, is that I had them cracked like this in little bags, and the acorn worms got to them. And you'll see the little fine fuzzies on them. So I was plucking, I thought it would be a good example to show you, see that little fine fluff? They didn't mind them. If you got them cleaned off and they got in your processing, that was okay. The worms are all right. But, you've got to be careful when you do store them. And they would store them in bins in the old days with a lot of cedar boughs all around it. You also can use bay leaves and wormwood. Anything that is a natural bug repellent you can mix in with your acorns. Yes.
Were the buckeye nuts ever used?
Yes. Yes.
And how was their nutrition?
They're toxic. They're toxic, but they did use them. And my uncle was down last month. He lives in Oregon, and he was going to collect buckeye and take home and cook. They'll roast them until they're just mushy. They're overcooked, in other words. And then they squish them up and mush them up. And he said it's really good. Once you've cooked the heck out of it, you don't have to leach those. You just have to really cook them well. And the old timers used to take the buckeye and put them in inside the charcoals or the embers and just leave them there and move them around and then let them sit until they were way well done, past done. Some people acquired that taste. I've never had buckeye, but he says it's delicious, and I'll take his word for it. I'm going to have him make me some one day. Yes?
How did they prevent squirrels and rats or whatever from eating the nuts over the year that you're storing?
Keeping a lookout. You watched it, you know, because you had, not only did you have the squirrels or the rats, but you had birds trying to steal stuff too, woodpeckers. You had all kinds of critters that wanted to come and take it. So you did have to keep a lookout on your granary. Yes?
You said that the bedrock pounding rocks were not always close to water?
Springs.
Okay.
A lot of places had springs
I'm trying to say,
and small streams.
down Bancroft. Is it, how close is there?
Oh, she walked over. Someone took her over there for the video.
But when she lived there, what did she use?
She had a spring in her yard.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I've been seeing this every 4 days and that water coming down.
There's that whole ridge line has springs. That's what it was famous for. That's why the people moved over there off of Winchester. They didn't live on it because it's actually part of the Sierra Nevada. It's an unusual rock outcropping. It was an unusual rock outcropping, I should say. And it had a lot of springs. So when the people came in historically into the Meta Vista area, they accessed all those springs and had fruit ranches. And they had all these little ditches running all over that area feeding their ranches. So, well, I think I need to quit. It's going on 8 o'clock.